I was born in November 1938, a few days after Kristallnacht. That's the day when the German population rose up and did a pogrom. That's 1938 in November. That's less than a year before the war actually officially broke out. Uh, so I was young at that point, obviously. Uh, my family consisted of my two parents, who were from Poland originally. They didn't know each other in Poland, came to Paris separately, met in Paris, France, and got married and had my brother and then me. Then it started to get dicey to stay up in the northern part of France, um, because that's where the Germans took over. The southern part of France was still so-called Free France, and we went down. My parents were able to get false papers, false identity papers from the Jewish underground. And at that point, that purpose, of course, was to try to get out of France, um, away from the Nazis. My brother and I, as I said, he was 5 years older, uh, and I was only 4. Um, we were hidden in a convent school. Uh, the uh, the nuns there took care of us. It seemed like a long time, but apparently it was only a few weeks, while my parents prepared to try to go elsewhere. Let me tell you about this part of it. My father, of course, everybody was discussing how to get out, how to get where to go that might be safer. My father told us he had a dream in which his father came and told him in the dream to go take Route 44. And because of that dream, my father made a decision that that's what we will do. We will try to get away, and we will use Route 44. Now, Route 44, if you look at a map, is a route that goes from France, from southern France to Switzerland. And so at Annemasse, we uh, were met by a guide, a local guide. This is a person who just lived there and knew the terrain very well. Um, this fellow would take groups of refugees for payment. He knew how to get to the border, and he knew how to avoid the sentries, the soldiers who would be tracking people who tried to get away. So this I do remember. We had a long walk at night through fields, through a forest. The guide had us walk in river streams, and the idea of that was to shake off any pursuing dogs at night, through a forest, and I remember the forest. And then we got to a barbed wire border, a border fence. And at the time, well, of course I was too young, but I'm told people didn't even know whether they had made it because there was some uncertainty who's on the other side of this barbed wire fence. It could have been German soldiers, that would mean the end, or it could be Swiss soldiers and we would be saved. Well, it turned out, yes, it was the Swiss border, and there was a Swiss soldier there where we got to in the middle of the night. Uh, the adults went through that barbed wire fence by separating the barbed wire. I remember that I was lifted up and um, put over the fence and taken down on the other side by this soldier. So that's one of my early memories. I remember I was put on a train to go from Geneva to Basel, and just with a note tied around my neck indicating where I'm supposed to get off and be picked up by this host family. I remember that the train ride. I also remember that when I got to that family, I refused to take my coat off because I felt if I take my coat off, I would definitely have to remain. And of course, there was no choice. Um, the family had kids my age as well, and they treated me nicely. It seemed like a very, very long time, but I'm told it was only 14 months. I do remember two Christmases spent with that family. So it's definitely more than a year. I'm told it was only 14 months, but it seemed a lot longer than that. And let me just throw in a little episode that might be of interest. The family that took me in was not Jewish. They, however, were willing to send me to the main part of town. They were in the outskirts of the town. They sent me to the main part of town to a rabbi who would teach little kids the very fundamentals, the basics of being a Jew. And they did that. They sent me. Um, they would give me tickets to take this tram that went to the middle of town, and I would go for the lesson and come back. And that was the routine. I think once a week, if I may have that wrong. I think it was once a week. Anyway, the story I want to tell about this is, well, it's how I know that there really is a God. I'll tell you how. This one time, I went to the town to the rabbi, to his class, and then after that, I went back to the tram station to take the tram back to the house, and I discovered that I lost the ticket. And I'm 5 years old, and I don't have a ticket yet where I'm supposed to be, so I did the natural thing. I started bawling and crying, and it was the end of the world for me. But there is a God. Somebody up there does like me, and there is a God. How do I know? Because that was the exact moment when my father showed up at that same tram station because he was coming to visit. He had the right to visit me twice that year or a little more than a year. And that was the moment when he showed up. So he saw me crying and he picked me up and I was saved from that horror. So as I said, that's how I know there is a God up there watching over.